May 28, 1916. Brooklands Aerodrome, England. The chief test pilot of the Sopwith Company, Harry Hawker, climbs into the cockpit of a strange machine that had just been delivered here in parts by truck. This aircraft didn't have one wing, nor two, but three, stacked one above another like the steps of a drunken staircase. Mechanics shook their heads in bewilderment as they watched the preparations for the first flight. The designer Herbert Smith had dared to create something utterly radical, and now it would become clear whether it was genius or madness. The Clerget rotary engine, producing 110 horsepower, roared to life, and the three wings lifted off the ground. But what happened next surprised everyone. Just minutes after takeoff, Hawker began performing consecutive loops on the prototype. The airplane behaved like a circus acrobat, obediently drawing figures of advanced aerobatics in the sky. Its climb rate was phenomenal. The machine soared upward like a rocket, reaching an altitude of 3,500 meters in just 13 minutes. For comparison, other fighters of that time took twice as long. When Hawker landed, he was surrounded by a crowd of amazed engineers and military observers. The pilot was thrilled. The three narrow wings provided incredible maneuverability. Each wing was equipped with ailerons, allowing the aircraft to literally spin in the air. The narrow chord of the wings gave the pilot excellent visibility, something lacking in other fighters. Representatives of the Royal Naval Air Service and the Royal Flying Corps immediately showed interest, and orders began pouring in even before testing was complete, but the real test awaited the triplane ahead. In June 1916, the prototype was sent to France for combat trials with one of the squadrons of the Royal Naval Air Service. Something remarkable happened there. The plane arrived at the aerodrome, mechanics barely had time to inspect it, when 15 minutes later an alert was sounded, enemy German aircraft spotted. Triplane. It was immediately scrambled to intercept. It was its first combat flight, and the machine hadn't even been painted with camouflage yet. The pilot returned victorious, he had shot down the German aircraft. The triplane proved to be an absolute predator in the air. Its ability to quickly gain altitude allowed it to attack enemies from above, while its maneuverability made it nearly untouchable in close combat. German pilots encountered a machine that could turn on the spot faster than they could aim. Pilots of the Royal Naval Air Service instantly fell in love with the new fighter and demanded its mass production start as soon as possible. By February 1917, the first serial triplanes began arriving in the 8th and 9th Naval Squadrons. Production models were equipped with a more powerful 130 horsepower engine, further enhancing their already impressive performance. The aircraft was armed with a single synchronized Vickers machine gun firing through the propeller. By April, 6 squadrons of the Royal Naval Air Service were flying triplanes, each reporting impressive results in air combat. However, the designers continued to improve the machine. In February 1917, an order came to replace the tail assembly on all triplanes, both those in service and those still on the assembly line. The new, smaller tail greatly improved control response and allowed the aircraft to enter vertical dives, which had previously been difficult. This modification turned the already deadly machine into an absolute weapon of aerial combat, able to attack from any angle and altitude. In the spring of 1917, a squadron appeared on the Western Front that shook the entire German command. The 10th Naval Squadron of the Royal Naval Air Service was reinforced with brand new triplanes. One of its flights decided to stand out in a special way. Flight Sub-Lieutenant Raymond Collishaw led a group of 5 pilots who painted the engine cowlings, metal panels of the fuselages, and wool fairings in a sinister black color. Thus, the legendary Black Flight was born, soon becoming a true nightmare for German aviation. Black triplanes appeared in the sky like a flock of predatory ravens. German pilots quickly learned to recognize them from afar. To see a black plane meant one thing: a deadly battle with some of Britain's best aces was about to begin. Collishaw selected only experienced and aggressive pilots for his flight, men who did not know fear. Every sortie was a hunt, and they never missed their prey. The tactics of the Black Flight were simple and deadly. Using the triplane's phenomenal climb rate, they would gain altitude above the enemy and then dive down on them, using their maneuverability advantage to engage in close combat. The results exceeded all expectations. From May to July 1917, just 3 months of intense air battles, the Black Flight destroyed 87 German aircraft. These were not just claims but confirmed kills. Raymond Collishaw himself recorded 33 victories flying the triplane. Out of his total 60 confirmed kills during the war, more than half were achieved while flying the three-winged machine. This made him the most successful ace to have flown the Sopwith Triplane. German pilots reported to their command that they had encountered a completely new type of fighter, superior to anything they had seen before. The British triplane could turn on the spot while the German plane was still finishing a wide turn. It climbed to the clouds while the enemy was still accelerating. It appeared from nowhere and disappeared just as quickly, leaving behind burning wrecks of German aircraft. Reports from the front caused real panic within the German high command. The Germans realized they were facing something revolutionary and immediately ordered their designers to develop their own triplane. Combat use of the triplane continued on all sections of the Western Front. Besides the Black Flight, many other pilots scored victories flying this machine. The aircraft proved so effective in air combat that the Germans began to avoid encounters with it, preferring to attack other types of British fighters. The narrow wings of the triplane gave the pilot excellent visibility up and down, which was critical in vertical maneuvering fights. Ailerons on all three wings provided lightning-fast control response, allowing pilots to enter steep turns and rolls almost instantly. However, this remarkable machine had its drawbacks, which soon became more apparent. The single Vickers machine gun armament was insufficient compared to the new German fighters that began appearing with 2 synchronized machine guns. Attempts were made to install a second gun. 6 planes are known to have received additional armament, but this never became standard. Additionally, the complex three-wing structure caused serious problems with field repairs. Spare parts for the triplane became a real headache for mechanics at the front. Even minor damage to one of the 3 wings required extensive replacement or repairs. Unlike conventional biplanes, where one wing could be replaced relatively quickly, the triplane required careful balancing of all 3 planes. The slightest misalignment worsened flight characteristics or even led to complete loss of control. Supply of spare parts was patchy, production lagged behind frontline demand, and damaged aircraft often sat idle for weeks waiting for needed components. The situation was complicated by the fact that the triplane was manufactured not only by Sopwith itself but also under license by other firms. Clayton and Shuttleworth produced 47 machines, Oakley and Company made just 3, and Sopwith built 95 including 2 prototypes. A total of 147 triplanes were produced, a small number for a war of such scale. Different manufacturers had minor variations in details, complicating repair and parts interchangeability at the front. Mechanics sometimes could not swap parts between planes made by different producers. By summer 1917 it became clear that despite all its outstanding qualities, the triplane had limited potential for further development. Sopwith was already finishing work on a new fighter, the Camel, which promised to combine the best qualities of the triplane with a simpler biplane design and 2 machine guns instead of 1. It was easier to produce, cheaper to maintain, and had significantly greater firepower. The Royal Naval Air Service began planning the transition to the new aircraft. In July 1917, the 7th and 8th Naval Squadrons were the first to receive new Sopwith Camels as replacements for their triplanes. Pilot retraining went quickly. Many flight characteristics were similar, although the Camel demanded more careful handling and was less forgiving of pilot error. The triplanes were sent to rear units where they were used for training new pilots or for various experiments. By November 1917, the last triplanes had left frontline service. Their combat career lasted less than a year, but in that short time they left an indelible mark on the history of air warfare. Interestingly, the triplane also saw service outside the Western Front. A single example was sent to the Aegean Sea where it was used by the second wing of the Royal Naval Air Service, based on the island of Mudros. This machine patrolled the Aegean waters, protecting British ships from potential attacks by German and Turkish aircraft. The Mediterranean climate proved more favorable for the wooden structure of the triplane than the dampness of Flanders, and this machine served longer than its counterparts on the Western Front. Several triplanes also reached Allied hands. The French received at least 4 machines used for testing and pilot training. French pilots highly praised the maneuverability of the British fighter, but their command decided not to purchase the triplane, focusing instead on their own designs, the Nieuport and SPAD fighters. One triplane was sent to distant Russia in May 1917. The Russian Empire showed great interest in the latest Allied developments, and the British decided to demonstrate their advanced machine. In Russia, the triplane underwent an interesting modification. Instead of the usual wheeled landing gear, skis were installed for winter operations. This was a unique version, the only one of its kind. Russian pilots conducted a series of test flights, and the machine showed good results despite significantly increased weight due to the skis. Its climb rate slightly decreased but remained impressive. However, the revolutionary events in Russia interrupted further cooperation, and no additional triplanes were delivered. This single ski-equipped aircraft survived the revolution and civil war and eventually ended up in a Soviet museum collection. After withdrawal from frontline service, the remaining triplanes found a second life as training machines. New pilots learned air combat skills on them, practiced advanced aerobatics, and got used to the speeds and stresses of real fighting. The triplane was forgiving enough for novice pilots, making it a good training platform. Some machines were used for various experiments, testing new engine types, weapons, and radio equipment. However, the experiment did not yield positive results. By the end of the war, most of the triplanes had been written off, dismantled for parts, or simply destroyed. The wood was used for firewood, metal parts were melted down, and the fabric covering was burned. The war machine no longer needed these aircraft. A new generation of fighters completely replaced the triplane. Only a few machines escaped this fate. 2 original triplanes have survived to this day. One is kept at the Royal Air Force Museum in London, where visitors can see this legendary aircraft in all its glory. The second is housed at the Central Air Force Museum in Menino, near Moscow. This is the very example that was sent to Russia and equipped with skis. The influence of the Sopwith triplane on aviation proved to be much more significant than one might expect given its short service life and small number produced. It was the triplane that forced the Germans to reconsider their fighter designs and create their own 3-winged aircraft. The Fokker Doctor I, though it appeared later and had a different design, was a direct response to the challenge posed by the British triplane. The psychological effect of the triplane's appearance in the skies over France in spring and summer 1917 is hard to overestimate. The triplane's design was largely based on proven solutions from earlier Sopwith aircraft. The fuselage was almost identical to that of the famous Sopwith Pup fighter, which had already earned a reputation as a reliable and maneuverable machine. The tail unit was also taken unchanged from the Pup, although it was later replaced with a specially designed smaller version. This allowed the development and production of the new fighter to be significantly accelerated without reinventing what already worked flawlessly. The main innovation was the 3 wings instead of the traditional 2. Each of the 3 wings had a narrow chord, the width of the airfoil from leading to trailing edge. This was a bold step, because traditional biplanes of the time had wide wings to generate sufficient lift. Herbert Smith, the chief designer, calculated that 3 narrow wings would provide the same lift as 2 wide ones while offering better visibility for the pilot. The calculations were correct. The triplane pilot could see almost all around him, which was a huge advantage in combat where the enemy could attack from any direction. All 3 wings were equipped with ailerons, movable surfaces on the trailing edges controlling roll. This was rare for the time. Most biplanes had ailerons only on the upper wing. The triple set of ailerons gave an incredible response speed to pilot commands. When the pilot moved the control stick sideways, the aircraft literally threw itself in that direction. The roll rate of the triplane was so high that inexperienced pilots were initially frightened by the sharp controls. But for air combat, this was invaluable. The ability to change direction instantly often meant the difference between life and death. The wings were attached to the fuselage by a system of struts and wires, thin metal cables that created a rigid spatial structure. The spacing between the wings was carefully calculated to ensure optimal airflow. Wings placed too close would interfere with each other and reduce lift, too far apart would increase the weight due to longer struts. Sopwith engineers found the golden mean, and the three wings worked almost as a single lifting surface without disturbing each other. An interesting feature of the design was the adjustable stabilizer. The pilot could change the angle of the horizontal tailplane in flight, achieving aircraft trim for hands-off flying. This greatly reduced fatigue during long patrols, when the pilot spent hours in the air scanning for the enemy. Setting the correct angle allowed the triplane to fly straight and level, letting the pilot relax the grip on the stick and focus on watching the sky. The Clerget rotary engine was typical for fighters of the time but had one unusual feature. In rotary engines, not the crankshaft but the cylinders and propeller rotated around a fixed shaft. This created a strong gyroscopic effect that influenced the aircraft's behavior in flight. The triplane tended to turn more easily in one direction and harder in the other due to this effect. Experienced pilots learned to use this characteristic, developing combat tactics that maximized the easy turn and compensated for the difficult one. The single 7.7mm Vickers machine gun was mounted in front of the cockpit and fired through the propeller arc using a synchronization gear. This mechanism interrupted firing when the propeller blade passed in front of the barrel. The system worked reliably, but one gun had a rate of fire of about 600 rounds per minute. By comparison, two guns fired 1,200 rounds per minute, doubling the chances of hitting a fast-moving target. Ammunition loads typically included several hundred rounds, enough for a few short bursts in combat. Triplane pilots developed a special tactic to compensate for the lack of firepower. Instead of firing from a distance, they closed into minimum range where every bullet hit its target. The triplane's excellent maneuverability allowed them to get on the enemy's tail and stay there despite all attempts to break away. A skilled triplane pilot could literally stick to an enemy aircraft and methodically shoot it down from just a few dozen meters away. This tactic required nerves of steel but yielded excellent results. Comparing the triplane with contemporary German fighters showed the clear advantage of the British machine in maneuverability and climb rate. German Albatros planes were faster in horizontal flight and had two guns, but could not match the triplane in vertical maneuvering. German pilots quickly realized that trying to engage the triplane in vertical combat was doomed. The British aircraft would simply climb, gain altitude, and attack from above. The only chance for the Germans was to use their speed advantage and attempt to escape by diving. The inability to catch the triplane while climbing and to shake it off in a dogfight led German command to urgently order the development of their own triplane. Fokker received the contract to build a three-winged fighter, and work was carried out urgently. German designers took a different approach. Their triplane had cantilever wings without external bracing wires, which simplified the structure but required a stronger and heavier internal frame. The Fokker Doctor I appeared only in the autumn of 1917, when British triplanes were already being withdrawn from frontline service. The triplane's ease of control made it a favorite not only of experienced aces but also of young pilots newly arrived at the front. The aircraft forgave many mistakes that would have caused crashes in other machines. Spins were rare, and recovery was straightforward. Landing was easy thanks to low landing speed and good forward-downward visibility. Takeoff did not require a long runway. The triplane lifted off after a short run and immediately began a rapid climb. Autumn 1917 marked the mass rearming of British naval squadrons with the new Sopwith Camel fighter. The 9th Naval Squadron was among the last to part with their triplanes. Pilots left the cockpits of their beloved machines with regret, understanding that the era of the three-winged Predator had ended. Many pilots openly said the triplane was the best air combat machine they had ever flown. Its unique combination of maneuverability, climb rate, and ease of control has never been repeated in aviation history. The last combat flights of the triplanes took place in October 1917. These machines dutifully patrolled the skies over British positions, intercepting German reconnaissance aircraft. Even as they became technically obsolete, the triplanes remained formidable opponents thanks to the skill of their pilots. By November, all remaining serviceable triplanes were sent to the rear, where they served as trainers. Damaged triplanes were cannibalized for parts to keep the last flying machines operational. 6 triplanes experimentally equipped with a second Vickers gun continued to be used for testing various weapons configurations. Engineers sought the optimal placement of the second gun without upsetting the aircraft's balance. Tests showed that the additional weight of the weapon and ammunition noticeably worsened flight performance, especially climb rate. The triplane lost its main advantage, becoming an ordinary fighter without outstanding qualities. For this reason, the 2-gun version never went into production, although the idea was sound. Training units operated triplanes until spring 1918. Flight school cadets gained invaluable experience piloting a real combat fighter before being sent to the front. They practiced advanced aerobatics, dogfighting maneuvers, and shooting at ground and air targets. The sturdy construction withstood rough landings by inexperienced pilots, though accidents still occurred. Gradually, the number of flying triplanes decreased due to wear and lack of spare parts. By summer 1918, only a few triplanes remained in the air. Production had long since stopped. Spare part stocks were depleted, and repair shops shifted focus to servicing new aircraft types. The last triplanes spent their final days on the outskirts of airfields, slowly deteriorating under rain and sun. Wooden structures rotted, fabric coverings tore in the wind, and metal parts rusted. No one needed these machines anymore.